Okay, we're live. Hi, Catherine.
All right.
Hi, Ron.
Hello.
Hi, Ron. Hi, Luciana.
How you doing?
Thanks for making it on the call. We're going on the cheap. We don't have the music anymore. StreamYard is cutting some services that we used to have. So anyway, we'll manage.
Yeah.
This is kind of a follow. All right, today is the 16th of October, 2025. This is kind of a follow-up of the episode 48 on mass poisonings. Why aren't we prosecuting them? So I just want to do a brief prayer to intro how we're following up with this. Lord, help us to cut through Satan's tangled web of confusion on his poisoning schemes. And help us keep in mind that you have tasked us not only to take dominion of the planet, to establish earthly justice, but help us to remind people that you are going to call on those of us who worship you to judge angels one day. So certainly we're in a position to judge these people who are committing these mass poisonings against the population of the world. Apparently, it isn't fine just to America now. But you have given us a promise that none of these weapons, bioweapons, chemical weapons, radiological weapons will prosper against us. Those of us who trust you. In Jesus' name we pray.
In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you.
All right. So just to kind of remind people, if you haven't checked in episode 48 last time, we were focused on the chemical and biological weapons that a lot of the agro weapons and the food additives. I think we did something with that, and so I just wanted to mention, without trying to further complicate the poisoning scheme, that there are other ways of poisoning people with radiological means. So, there may be somebody coming on who's giving me some information about that, and I will at least mention his information. He was talking.
Is it Mark? What is his name? Is it Mark?
Yes.
Okay, we have a Mark, but we have a Mark on, but it says that he's not connected. So
he just needs to follow more of the prompts, I think.
Yeah, to connect his mic. He doesn't have to connect his video camera, but his mic if he wants to talk. Because I can't even get him on this. I can't even get him on the screen until he's connected.
I don't know if he has a mic or a camera. He may only have to limit himself to the chat.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, he can chat, if I'm guessing. Okay, so just see.
Yeah. I want to, since he's on now, and may want to comment on my paraphrasing of what he emailed me a week or so ago, that there's under the category of geoengineering there's another scheme that he's familiar with, and it's called, let me find that. While I'm looking for that, there's Oh man, it's just so overwhelming. There is a what did he tell me it was? It's part of weather weaponization, and there's also a guy named Chris Stevens, former meteorologist, who quit being a meteorologist and began to expose some stuff there. But apparently,
what was it? What was his name? Chris Stevens?
Chris Stevens, yeah.
Oh,
Former
okay.
meteorologist with some corporate media. And but he was exposing that there's contaminants in the clouds that they're seeding, so that what they're doing is they're vaporizing raw sewage, and whether it's treated or not is probably less. It's disgusting, but it's probably less toxic than whatever they do to treat it. But they may not have to treat it at all if they're using it to form clouds. So think about that next time it rains. What's really coming down may not be from the heavens, and it may be, part of the cloud seeding. Yeah, now whoever is running that, I haven't, now cloud seeding itself has been around since the 19th century. It was used as part of weather weaponization during the Vietnam War, Operation Popeye, to carry out, to induce heavy rains over the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Mark had told me, here it is. Few aviation writers and historians seem to be aware that there were 3 WC-130As. These were originally trash haulers borrowed from TAC, I don't know what that is, in late 1966 for use in Operation Popeye. And tests were conducted over Laos in 1966 and continued into 1967 over Thailand. And they were flown by crews of the 54th WRS. I'm not sure what that is, but it's all part of either the Army, Navy, under the supervision of whoever's running Department of Defense, now called Department of War, and that would be Pete Buttigieg or something like that. So I just want to emphasize there are people that have some, that are aiding and abetting in this. And they can say they don't know anything about it all day long, but they're not going to say that when they're served individually with our notices. They've already admitted quite a bit. Another military attempt at weather control was Project Storm Fury. Was an experimental program of research on hurricane modification carried out between 1962 and 1983. And so and then more recently, we've got from the U.S. Department of Agriculture reported, I just saw this, that they're currently spraying over certain states. And I'm going to put this in the comments, so that the link, so that people can see. it's supposed to be they're dropping live viruses over certain parts of North Carolina, I think West Virginia, in a bunch of states. Not Ohio, but not yet. But I wonder, what are they really dropping? Because don't we know there is no such thing as viruses? There might be some engineered something or other that's, something that is toxic to human beings. They're allegedly dropping over, if they're doing anything at all, which of course we don't know.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of what we hear about is fear porn, and may not be exactly real. Trying to find the good parts of what Mark had sent me. Where all the moisture comes from in the storms, he says he studied this for over 20 years. I've seen it in my area on a regular basis. It's real, not going to stop. They'll talk about chemtrails, but they'll not mention this. The use of that's what it's called, wet surface air coolers for weather control and weather modification. And I bet this is not the only thing that is being used for weather control. This isn't even getting into HAARP, HAARP, and all its spinoffs.
Right. Yeah, I heard about that years ago, and I was shocked that people still today don't know about this. These weather modification programs. It's insane.
I suspect that people just, when they hear this, they think they're informed if they listen to the corporate media.
Yeah.
Brings up this guy who's Mr. Geoengineering, or thought in the public mind to be the activist against geoengineering, and that's Dane Wigington. He did a documentary. Dane Wigington is clearly, Mark calls him a half-truther. He's controlled up, and he has no solutions. His solutions have been, though, I was talking about the media, his solution has been to sue a couple of media guys. This was a couple of years ago, I think, for spreading false information. So, and there may be something to that. Of course, you don't go into their buddies, dens of iniquity to do it, using their the all capital version of their name. But that any justice that we're going to get on earth is going to have to be against God's creations. So Mark says the other elephant in the room is the Doppler radio towers, which Dane Wigington also covers up. But Dane Wigington has quite a following of people who think they're very well informed, and they won't listen to anything suggesting that he's hiding some of the real information. Many people say it's cell phone towers, and they have a different purpose. There are a lot of cell phone towers, and they may or may not be dangerous or as dangerous as this. I think it's WSAP. So forgive me, folks, that I'm stumbling and bumbling around because there is so much stuff. He had also sent me a Navy training film. that described similar to what Mel Samper talks about, the test attacks over areas in the United States that have been going on either from the air or, through jabbing since even before Tuskegee. Mass experimentation and this sounds like mostly Department of Defense type stuff, or what used to be Department of Defense, which is, of course, keep in mind, a private for-profit corporation. So always has been. So they're attacking one's own population for purposes of experimenting to see what will work well against the enemy, whoever that is deemed to be. Has been it's had justifications from here to eternity, but the harm continues, and the people are not informed. When they are informed, they're told it's just a conspiracy theory, nothing to see here, move along. But I wanted to just mention that there are real people, and they with real names and addresses that have some connection to this and won't deny it. Secretary of the Navy is the title, John C. Phelan. And he was sworn in 2025. I don't know if Frank's going to be on, probably not, but he had also told me, Frank Raffaelli, who's sometimes our host, he had he had been talking to me about the cell tower early history, and he had been an expert witness back in the late 90s or early 2000s in connection with a mother's movement to stop AT&T from putting a cell tower right next to a school building. Frank said he helped her fight AT&T in the city of Pepper Pike, Ohio, city council and law director, which of course that's obviously going to go nowhere. And of course it didn't go anywhere. This is what happens, folks. There was a big city council meeting with lots of angry moms and dads. Frank read from their own rules, FCC Title 47, which explained their cellular carriers can put up to 12 transmitters per tower, 1,500 watts each. The angry parents drowned out everything that was said. Anyway, again, the bad guy in this particular story, I guess this is part of geoengineering, was, and we experienced this too in Chillicothe. I was misquoted in the Sun newspaper the next day. I had mentioned Dr. Henry Lai, L-A-I, his research on rat exposure to microwave energy. And Lai had some compelling data. And I've got a link to that if anybody's interested on the effects on the DNA in rodent brains.
Wow.
So anyway,
what did they say? Go ahead. What did they say in the Sun paper about you the next day?
They said the quote read something like, according to Raffaelli, rats' brains will explode, which I don't think he said. I mean, he indicated he didn't say that. He was, they try and make us, anybody who's exposing the truth
sound crazy, yeah.
Radicalizing us.
That's it's so crazy. Yeah.
Well, when we have as far as the media, the corporate media, when we were fighting the the traffic cameras. Of course, we were, fighting within their system even, and which I wouldn't do today, but the whole town pretty much was behind us. And we had a meeting at the very building that they're trying to steal from us today. We had, a big meeting, and about to come in the door were members of the local Chillicothe newspaper, the Chillicothe Gazette, I think, at the time. I don't know if it's still operational or not. Nobody gives it much credibility, I don't think. But, I just made the executive decision that y'all aren't coming in. You are not coming in and misquoting us, which we know you do. And, there was the hue and cry over that. Oh, but we need the coverage. There's no such thing as bad publicity. Yes, there is.
Yeah. Wow.
So anyway, they didn't get in, but they managed to talk one of our people into giving an interview on a Columbus, corporate television station. And she later told me, I didn't see it, but she said the interview went well. I knew my stuff. I answered everything about the fraud that was the traffic surveillance cameras. And there was one question, only one question that they asked that I was confused about. So when they did the clip, they kept out all the stuff that she was knowledgeable about, and they put that one thing in that she was confused about, of course. So they like to do stuff like that. Or just out and out lie if they can. So I've been hogging the audio as usual, but I wanted to still get into who the people are that are running some of these operations. Oh, before we forget about the biochemical attacks that we covered in episode 48, I just wanted to mention specific names in case people think I'm making this stuff up. The big problem with food, and I'm particularly incensed about that because I'm suffering some sort of poisoning from something, and I gotta discover it. I've done that before. Among the agrochemicals that are in use are substances known as fipronil, chlorpyrifos, ethion, cypermetrina, and the antiparasitic ivermectin, which is still toxic. Fipronil gives acute episodes of vomiting and diarrhea. Chlorpyrifos can cause a range of symptoms affecting the nervous system: headaches, blurred vision, seizures, or unconsciousness. Ethion exposure can cause, and they're using all of these, not just one or two. Can cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, muscle tremors. A few weeks ago, I was noticing some tremors, and I thought, "Oh, I'm getting old. But I don't have it anymore. I've been fasting." And labored breathing, even death due to cardiac arrest or respiratory failure. That's ethion. Anyway, without getting into too much of the fear porn myself, keep in mind that a lot of these chemicals come from Kerry Group is one. There are many corporations running food additive and chemical. But I was talking about agrochemicals.
What was that word?
agrochemicals, agricultural chemicals.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So U.S. Part of the one of the geoengineering projects is facilitated by the War Department is the wildfire, the supposed wildfires, like we saw in Maui, that have as the purpose,
Oh,
getting
right.
getting to steal land without at a bargain basement price because they contaminate the land or is perceived as being contaminated anyway. So anyways, but the wildfires also result in droughts, and this is as well as severe weather that gets destructive. Tom Schultz of the U.S. Forestry Service and Pete Hegswith of the War Department and Sean Duffy of NASA were all part of the operation to, and not to mention your state level electrical monopolies. Part of that operation to destroy property. And it started at least with Love Canal in New York, if y'all remember that. Probably too young to remember that. So they've got names. U.S. Department of Agriculture that's supposedly behind the dropping of this live virus thing that they're doing currently. Had previously been headed by Phyllis Fong, F-O-N-G, as an inspector general who was arrested for refusing to vacate the D.C. office when Orange Puppet came in. And it's now got somebody else. But on top of that, we've got the CEO of the they're also the food additive companies, CEO of Kerry Group. A lot of them are in Europe, Germany, Ireland, but the as far as geographical location, the United States remains, I think, about 39% of these corporations are located in the continental United States. Then there's the CEO of Archer Daniels Midland, Juan Luciano. And he's been in this role since 2015. It's a Chicago-based corporation. I mention it too because my parents were invested in Archer Daniels Midland, among other chemical and pharmaceutical corporations. I bring this up to say nobody's hands are clean. And when I inherited blood money. And, I hope that I have put that to use in a way that is pleasing to God. Edmund Scanlon.
It's kind of hard to avoid, if you don't mind me jumping in there and saying that, Catherine. It's kind of hard to not, there's only so many degrees of separation between us and them, So, I mean, that's the only thing but I would never accuse you of anything, because like I said, it's hard not to be associated. My brother-in-law works for Mike DeWine. There you go. So,
well, the thing is, I think everybody's going to get what they deserve, and good or bad or somewhere in between. And, those of us who believe and who have repented and are forgiven, through Lord Jesus Christ, are going to, sit with him and judge angels. So we certainly ought to be getting some practice in doing that here on this planet, on Earth. And I wanted to mention too, speaking of how we're all complicit, but you can, as Christians, we're forgiven. So, but we have to show that we are truly repentant by our actions. And the theologian Mike Heiser talks about, he's a big X-Files fan, and I never was, but he said, I think it's episode 7, number 21, something like that, or season 7, episode 21. If anybody wants to look that up, that they were somehow, the two protagonists were given the choice of, you have 3 wishes kind of thing. And the typical wishes, well, our first wish is world peace. And upon making that wish, Mulder, whatever his name was, walks outside and nobody's there. Nobody. Scully?
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So, but yet I think that's, keep in mind, that's from corporate media. They want us to think, well, there's nothing we can do anyway, right? We're all complicit, so we ought to just go along with it because, we're just as complicit as they are. How can we, sit in judgment on them? Well, we're called upon to do that. We're called upon to create justice. We're called upon to enforce God's 10 commandments in case we didn't know what justice looked like. He told us. Okay, I'm going to muzzle myself a little bit now if anybody wants to jump in.
One thing I was thinking of while you were talking about things that are going on with you, I don't know if you'd considered that some of what was going on with you might have been energetic toxicity. Is that something you'd considered, or are you just assuming it's chemical?
Oh no! Radiological poisoning is definitely very, very significant. Absolutely, and we established that actually with the 5G in Placer versus DeWine in 2021. And I can go into that. It's on the website. It's on the court website. Exactly how that the energetic field or whatever from 5G spun the oxygen molecule somehow and created a lot of illness. And then there's a lot of the anecdotal information, the cruise ships and other places where they were just initiating 5G before people had gotten used to being around those energy fields. And that's where a lot of the outbreaks were happening.
Well, I mean, I know I've brought this up before, I think when Frank was on, but even something like the alternating current we use every day, there's toxicity embedded in that. I may have brought this up. I mean, I've actually done a couple of lives with some other people, but here's something I wanted to bring up. Thomas Edison was diabetic. Now, I tell somebody that, and they're like, well, big deal, him and everyone else, right? But the thing is, when Thomas Edison had diabetes, it was at a time when a doctor might diagnose 1 or 2 cases, and in some extremes, like 3 cases a year. And the difference between Thomas Edison and everyone is he was constantly immersed in toxic electromagnetic fields. You know, there was a time.
Mhm.
So here's what I think. I think whenever there's a dialogue on diabetes, everyone wants to shift everyone's, well, it's our diet. Our contemporary diet is really horrible, but I think there, in part, it's due to the toxicity of the power grid. And there are actually people at work now that are advocating for completely doing away with the power grid, because even we're not even talking about 5G. We're just talking about our public utilities that are toxic to us. You know,
well, they generate magnetic fields or something that interfere with
right.
biological.
We are entrained in those fields, and you know the concept of entrainment is pretty simple. You know, to understand, if I'm jumping on a trampoline with someone that weighs 100 pounds, they're going to be entrained in my frequency, whatever frequency I'm jumping, because I'm the more powerful force involved. If we're in these magnetic fields from the power lines, we're entrained in them because it's more powerful than our biofields. And I wonder how healthy it is to be in a magnetic field made up of alternating current of such a low frequency. It's 60 cycles per second. And this is something, you know, we look at Tesla, Nikola Tesla, and Tesla, was everything that he experimented with was high frequency. Tesla actually, the claim was he invented a high frequency alternator for power generation because the arc lights at the time were driving people insane because of the buzzing. So his goal was, well, let's get everything up, instead of 60 hertz, we'll get it up in 1100 hertz or 1200 hertz, you know, high frequency.
Explain to people what hertz are. A lot of people don't know.
Hertz is simply cycles per second. That's an easier way to understand it. Whenever alternating current is shifting back and forth, you know, you have direct current. Direct current is just electricity moving through a wire directly. Alternating current is where the polarity reverses, and it reverses 60 times per second. That's 60 hertz or 60 CPS. And the greater the frequency that happens with, the healthier it is. But I think we are still, you know, even when we talk about 5G, we're still suffering the ill effects of the power grid. And there are people. Here's a name you might want to look up: Sky Huddleston. He's a young mechanical engineer. He's trying to decentralize the grid. In fact, what he's trying to do is basically make it to where everybody has their own power source in their home.
Yeah.
Because these big electromagnetic fields that we're in from the power grid are harming us. And he's aware of it.
And would people be using direct current then?
I think alternating current is okay as long as it's a high enough frequency. But we could use either or. I guess it could just be a matter of choice. The low voltage direct current or just high frequency alternating current. But it's that low frequency that's harmful, because human beings are not geared toward low frequency anything. We're high frequency beings. But like I said, that's a guy who one thing is he's meeting a lot of resistance. His ideas aren't really popular. You know, he gets a lot of flack for it. Really, what he's doing is he's helping develop Russell Burke's engine. But this engine that he's developing, he's trying to get it set up to where it can run on fuels that people can make themselves or run on sewage. You know, it's funny. I thought it was funny when you were mentioning sewage earlier. You know, here's someone that's actually trying to use sewage to provide power for our power grid. In other words, it's processed away to nothing. He's also trying to do that with waste. He's trying to eliminate the landfills because he thinks we can derive our power from a lot of different sources of waste. But I guess the point I was trying to make is of course we want to look at 5G, but we should even look at our power grid, because I think that's a direction we need to go in. That's actually going to be essential, because we need to take the grid down.
Isn't the power grid implementing the 5G antenna?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah. I gotta tell you though, I would be willing to bet. I don't know this for certain, but even if the power grid did go down, I would be willing to bet that the 5G systems have their own autonomous power sources. Because
I bet they do too.
It's a weaponized system. So I don't think that if you were making a weapon like that, you would want it to be dependent on the power grid. Because who knows?
To administer the 5G antennas that are basically wireless, then, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they may be getting their power from either there, using some classified free energy technology, or it may be being transmitted wirelessly from somewhere else. I mean, we don't know that, but I would be willing to bet it's not dependent on the power grid. They would have considered that, the people that are making these systems. I don't think they would want to have it relying totally on the power grid. But I think a lot of the health issues we have to kind of go back into this. I think a lot of the health issues we have are relevant to the power grid. I think that plays a role in. This is something I've actually had a pretty significant dialogue with Larry over the last month, with other people. And I'm actually trying. It's funny you mentioned the show is about this topic, as I've been talking about this with other people over the course of the month. I'm trying to help people be aware of, if this is going on in the world, we need to head in the other direction. Whatever is going, we need to be doing the opposite.
Well, there's, we need to be off the grid, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the grid needs to go away. I would say that without a moment's hesitation, because
for people to be comfortable with that, though, they would have to get off the grid themselves, because people are addicted to their electricity. I know I am.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm saying we need an alternate system. We need to have something in place to get us away from that. Because the way I see it, that's dangerous to be dependent on something that is 10, 15, 20 miles away from you.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, we know the state likes to create emergencies for various purposes. Oh, hey, the power grid's down. It was a terrorist attack. They could stage that if they wanted to, and people would just believe it.
Of course.
So at any rate, yeah, that's someone I've actually steered a lot of people to, is Sky Huddleston. He's a big proponent of eliminating the grid. I'd almost say that's essential that we head in that direction.
Has he put that into practice?
Oh yeah, he's got projects that work. Well, if you look him up on YouTube, there's several videos about what he's doing. But he's working right now. One of his goals, he wants to be able to give the average guy a megawatt of power if they want it. According to him, he and some of the people he's working with are developing power systems where, let's say hypothetically, you have 100 of these in a parking lot somewhere. They could replace an entire power station. pretty significant stuff.
Wow.
Without negative health effects.
No, that's exactly right. Without negative health effects. Well,
Does he-
just reducing it to that scale. If the electric current isn't traveling miles through wires, you don't have those big fields. Just the scaling down of that would have that effect. Would eliminate the health effects. In other words,
And
the thing that's
he-
toxic. I'm
is
sorry.
he
Go
getting
ahead.
blowback from the FCC?
What's that now?
Is he getting blowback from the FCC?
He didn't say if he is. I wouldn't be surprised if he is.
Yeah.
Because I think we wouldn't be shocked if they, the state wants us dependent on central utilities because that's a control mechanism. Hey, we turn the power off, everyone panics. It's a way to control human behavior.
Sure.
Hey, make people afraid, you can control them.
He's just another group of gangsters that was never even authorized by their 1787 Constitution.
Right. No, I think that we are long overdue for that. We need to, in my humble opinion, I think that the utility grid shouldn't not just be decentralized; it should be made fluid and portable. I would like to see people have mobile power sources that you can move around instead of that. Instead of having a bunch of tiny little power stations, we have power stations that can power your house, and they'd be mobile too. That's kind of my spin on things. I'd like to see it fluid as well as decentralized.
And that would still be considered wireless technology, wouldn't it?
Not necessarily. Okay, let's say my car or my vehicle that I use for transportation is has its own power source. I get it back to my house. I plug my house into it. Now the power station's powering my house, and instead of powering my vehicle. But no, that I don't know that'd necessarily be wireless.
You're needing a fuel source, though, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
But that fuel source could be extremely varied. Like I said, this guy's talking about running cars off of sewage.
What about running them off of solar energy?
Or solar, or any number of power sources.
Right.
Construction waste, garbage. There's something I learned from Paul Pantone. Just about anything could be fuel. We could have eliminated landfills years ago with the technology Paul Pantone was developing, turning it all into energy. Things like waste plastic. I mean, geez, there's something that we have a lot of is waste plastic.
Yeah.
What I'd like to see personally, one of the things I'd like to see too is, a lot of the free energy technology we've discussed. That'll solve a lot of problems. And I basically see Sky Edelson's work as kind of a stopgap in that direction. But no, that's definitely one. I think that's a source of the public health issues is the power grid, just the power grid itself. I mean, not even going into 5G. And and decentralizing it would be killing two birds with one stone. Now we're not trained in these big toxic electromagnetic fields, and there's the economic freedom that would obviously come with that too. Not being, I always thought that was kind of crazy, even as a kid, that here we are, we're buying the same power that we could generate ourselves. I want you to imagine you're going to the store to buy tomatoes, and you got a bunch of tomato plants in your backyard. That would be that's the same logic. I mean,
we're buying water that we could pump ourselves from.
You could extract from the environment. You know, we have waters everywhere. I mean, there's water in the air, literally. You know.
They have to create this mindset of scarcity, though, so that they can sell you what they're billing.
There is no scarcity. Scarcity, nature is not geared towards scarcity. Nature is geared toward abundance. I mean, you ever doubt that? You know, look out your window and watch the critters in your front yard. They don't. Nothing is scarce to them. You know, I do that all the time. Hey, they always seem to have plenty of everything because they don't have someone externally from them creating the scarcity.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, poverty, scarcity, all these things are man-made. They're man-made constructs. They don't exist on their own. I mean, nature is geared to success. I mean, this is, you know, I guess it also falls back on we were given everything. You know, our Creator gave us everything we needed. You know, there's a scriptural verse. You know, hey, I took the care of the birds. I didn't forget about you. You know, I've got the birds taken care of. So you know, hey, I got you. But the thing is, we've been drawn away from that, though. So I think that's.
I think Lord Jesus said something about that. You know, the sparrows have a place to a nest, and you know, all these creatures have homes, but the Son of Man has nowhere to rest his head at night.
Right, but that's all by design. That came into being with the the central banking and various Babylonian systems. Except we had to create scarcity. It doesn't happen by itself.
Right. Yeah. So, trying to see if there is.
That's the original point I was thinking. That's something. I mean, we should be aware of the 5G, but we should also look at. I know we're kind of bouncing around all over the place, but I that's something we definitely want to keep in mind. Is the how the power grid itself is bad for our health.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of simplifying of our lifestyle that we've got to.
Well, there's something in and of itself. I mean, the simplification of everything, like our technology. I you know, like I said, this is something I've covered with a lot of people over the last month. If you look at, I'll tell you what, I'll pull one example here. In the mid 90s, there was a gentleman named Jim Coates who created a way to simplify the valve train in your car.
What the valve carry and what is it?
The valve train in a car's engine. If you look at the springs, if you have a car, the valves are operated by springs. There's springs in them, and those springs consume 25% of the engine's horsepower. And this man named Jim Coates, and there was a couple other companies that found a way to circumvent that with rotary valves. And here we are, 30 some odd years later, and there are no production cars with rotary valves. I did my own calculations on this. There's enough energy being wasted with this old technology. You could power 5-6 million homes with it. And this would be by using a simplified technology. And it's amazing. These ideas never come into being.
That's because people get greedy and they want to patent them. We've talked about that.
Oh yeah. And that's certainly part of it. In fact, if we speak specifically of Jim Coates, he did that. He patented the technology.
I don't feel a bit sorry for him then.
Yeah. Well, I'd be willing. Well, I think we know how this works too. You also have DARPA. If you're developing an idea, the primary problem you have is money. I mean, no mystery there. Hey, I'm developing this new rotary engine and I'm trying to raise money. So along comes DARPA. Hey, I got money for you. The military wants to take your rotary engine and make a generator with it. So we have a lightweight portable generator that we can move around, right? Well, here's the thing. Once the military gives you money,
Oh,
they now have control of it. They're telling you who you can and can't sell it to. So that technology will never be available to the public because it falls under national security
yeah. There's
administration policy.
reasons, but that's your first premise, Ron, that if you're going to develop any kind of alternative, energy source, you're going to
Run
need.
from the patent office. Don't have any. Don't go anywhere in the patent office. That is the end of it.
Right, but why do you need a lot of money?
It depends. I mean, if you're developing, say the Liber Lotto engine, there was a lot of, and this falls back on complexity. Hey, I made a rotary engine. It has a 2-phase combustion cycle. So this engine is every bit as complex as car engines are now. So we got to do a lot of R&D, and we got to fine tune it, and we got to have parts made by machinists and contractors. So it takes money. Now, from my perspective, we could just use technology that's proven itself. We've discussed steam turbines. Steam turbines are really simple. I mean, the R&D budget on that would be next to nothing, but nobody thinks like that.
We have to think like that.
Right. I mean, I've made that. I've got, I make YouTube videos about it. Hey, I got an idea. Why don't we stick with what we know works and try to create, instead of trying to create something new that needs a lot of investor capital, why don't we just stick with what we know works? There's all these technologies that are proven that are just sitting on a shelf waiting for someone to use. And a lot of these things, you were making reference to patents. One example of this I can think right off the top of my head is the engine, the Angelo de Pietro, invented in 1990. That patent protection's expired probably 5-6 years ago or 10 years ago. There's all these things that never happened that are working that the patents have already expired.
Well,
that's kind of sad in and of itself that these things have existed long enough where the patents were issued and expired already, and they were never used.
Well, God's aware of all this, and apparently this, if that was unacceptable and something would have happened. As far as just taking a broad look at all this, in the unapproved, apocryphal book of Adam and Eve, chapter 20, after Cain and his family, Cain and his descendants split off from Seth and his descendants, there was a guy by the name of Genon, Genun, son of Lamech. And apparently Satan got to him during childhood and taught him how to make sundry trumpets and horns and string instruments, cymbals and psalteries and lyres and harps and flutes. And he played on them at all times and at every hour. And that wasn't all that Satan taught Genon. He also taught him how to distill strong drink out of corn. And he taught him how to take iron and with it make weapons of war. So, whatever, original sinful nature, man had, technology has made it so much worse. So
that brings to mind the world hasn't changed much.
not to say that we shouldn't have it, but it shouldn't be. We gotta respect it,
Mm-hmm.
and not let it get out of hand. But we've done that, we, and we've got all the toxicities and everything that come with it. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that falls back on nothing new under the sun. I mean, these are things that have been going on a long time. And
right.
I mean, I'm frequently making reference to it. We're about 1,500 years behind where we should be.
What do you mean where we should be electronically or technologically?
With the development of our technologically? Here's something I don't know if we've ever discussed this. I know we have, but in 1912, an engineer developed bearings that are good for 1,300 years, and all of our machinery wears out in 10. So it's funny. None of these things ever seem to. Well, they only see limited use. We should be at a point where we can extract our power directly from the Earth ionosphere source. We shouldn't even be looking at things like engines and generators and things like that. We should be beyond that.
Yes.
And if you think about it, these limitations keep us at a low level where we can't think of bigger things, like our relationship with our Creator. And I think that's a big part of why that system is in place. We just stay here at this low level, trying to think about how we're going to pay our electric bills or buy gasoline or whatever, keep the utilities going, or just trying to I'm just making ends meet.
And we're all complicit in it to some degree. I mean, because because of the corporate structure dictates that it's not enough to make a profit. You have to make a greater profit than what you made last year and the year before, and you have to keep growing, because that's how you get your financing.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's a consuming and wasting that accompanies that. I'll tell you something. I don't know if you're aware of the whole thing with the Windows 11. Yesterday, this if you know anything about computers, Windows 11 support or Windows 10 support supposedly ended, and I'm going to tell you what that's all about. Microsoft is pushing Windows 11 because if I try the laptop that I'm using right now, I would bet money that if I tried to upgrade this laptop to Windows 11, I'm going to get a message window that says that my hardware won't run the programming. So this perfectly good laptop is going to head to a landfill so that I can go and buy a new one unnecessarily. So now there's, if you get on YouTube, it's buzzing with people saying, okay, here's how to keep your Windows 10 going.
I've got Windows 7.
Oh, you have Windows 7?
I still have 10. I have 10, but 7, Catherine. Wow.
Oh.
But I don't try to do anything fancy, if I get referred to something, I just, I don't do apps. I just avoid anything that,
Well, there's steps you can take to maintain Windows 10, but it's gonna be a little bit of a challenge, though, because But the thing is, that's the same. It's the same thing with everything. We we want your cars to wear out in 5 years. If you look at anything that's made since 2015, they've made it unrebuildable. The engines are they can't be rebuilt.
It's the same thing with these cell phones too.
Oh yeah, yep.
Definitely.
Gotta have that. Hey, gotta have a new cell phone because I imagine they're doing the same thing with electronics and the cell phone.
Oh,
but here we are. We're constantly being lectured about sustainability, while we're getting cheap throwaway junk thrown at us. That's a thing that really. Well, hey, I'm all about sustainability. Let's build Sky Huddleston's 10 million mile engine and see how sustainable that is. The engines that this kid is working on are good for 10 million miles by the design.
Where's he from?
I think he's from somewhere in northeastern part of the United States. I think like up around Maine. But he's literally working on. There's a design for this engine he's working for. The engine's good for 10 million miles, and when it's worn out at 10 million miles, it takes a half hour to rebuild it, and you're good for another 10 million miles. Now, wouldn't that be wonderful for sustainability? Hey,
right,
that engine will last 100 years. Instead of.
But they trick us with words like upgrade. What you got. It looks like, oh, this is an improvement. Who's an improvement for? It's an improvement for their bottom line.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I would be willing to bet if there were 100 guys like me, and if I asked them if they ever heard of Russell Burke's engine, they probably never heard of it. I'd be willing to bet they've never heard of it. This was a guy who, this engine has been around since 1942. And Hot Rod Magazine did a write-up on it and said, wow, this is going to replace every engine. This is a better engine. It's going to replace every engine. And a month later, they were talking about how it's a piece of garbage and everybody should run like crazy from him. He got a business partner who basically, I think, was sent from somebody to sabotage his work. And it's a big long rabbit hole, but here it is. For the last, I don't know, 80 years, we've had engine technology for engines that could last 10 million miles, and here we are today. 2025. If you buy a new car, you'd be lucky if you get 100,000 miles out of that engine. There's a lot of engines that aren't lasting even 100,000 miles. So, where are we going? I guess that's a question I'd ask everybody. Where are we headed?
And most people are just, they're conditioned to think that newer is better.
Well, it's funny. There are technologies older than what we're. Sorry about that. Sorry, that's okay, buddy. I'm sorry. Here, let me got her thing interrupted here. Come on, buddy. Anyway, where was I? We were talking about engine.
Yeah.
No, we if you look at something as recent as 2005, we had 500,000 mile engines. General Motors was making engines that last 500,000 miles as recently as the early 2000s. But here's the thing: whenever we got to a certain point, when they realized, hey, look, this is killing us, they removed those engines from their lineup and they replaced them with garbage.
Well, that's mentioned before, the John D. Rockefeller business plan: make a crappy product, so they'll have to keep buying new.
Well, John Rockefeller Oh, okay. I remember where I was going with this. The difference between an Otto cycle engine and a Stirling cycle engine. The Stirling cycle is an older technology. Robert Stirling developed an engine in 1842, whereas the Otto cycle engine came around in 1860. And the older Stirling cycle engine is more advanced. It doesn't have all the auxiliary systems that are necessary for the Otto cycle. So it's cheaper to manufacture. NASA built one. NASA built one in the 1990s. They tested it in a handful of cars and it worked really well. And then it went away for good. Nobody ever did. The Air Force was actually doing part of the testing for NASA. They had General Motors built a 500cc version that made more power than a 2500cc Otto cycle engine. And once that testing was done, they put it on a shelf and forgot about it. And that is an older technology. And it's a point I make to people: if a technology being newer doesn't necessarily mean it's better or more advanced. It might be less advanced.
Well, in fact, it's less likely to be better in terms of maintaining it or in terms of its function or anything.
Here's something. I have gotten a lot of flack by talking about this with like guys that are, mechanics. Okay. I asked a couple of mechanics, do you realize that the fact that you have to change the oil in your car is a design flaw? If you have to change the oil in your car, that's bad design. Well, that's crazy. Of course you have to change your oil. That's crazy. But there have been engines developed that you'd never have to change your oil because the friction, everything's isolated from the combustion process. Those engines exist. But here's the thing: they've been ingrained in that thought process. They can't even entertain the notion that that is a design flaw.
Right.
Russell Berg's engines like that. So we've been conditioned to think, okay, every 3,000 miles we have to change our oil, we have to change our air filters, we have to take the car in for a tune-up, and yet there are engines that have existed that don't need any of that. They have none of the auxiliary systems of a standard car engine. But and the thing is, nobody knows about them. You literally have to look for these things to find them.
It just seems
most
like
people aren't looking.
People don't want to look at simpler solutions to anything.
Yeah. Well, right. We can go across the board with that. I mean, if you look at how that applies to law, the simpler the law is, the more powerful it is because it's more accessible. That was there was a law guru years ago used to during his lectures would tell people that the law is one of those things that the simpler it is, the more powerful it is. And like I see that across the board. I think it's the simpler anything is, the more powerful it is. Because it's more accessible and it's easier to understand.
Yeah. Well, the Bible, is the model for all law, and it's
no complexity to it. 10 Commandments are pretty simple.
Yeah, right. And and then there are other examples. If I can't think of anything that really wouldn't be covered, any situation wouldn't be covered somehow by one of the 10 Commandments. I'm sure as human beings, we're gonna, if we were ever to decide a contested matter, which we've never had to do in our court, we would we could either refer to the 10, and the 10 Commandments didn't cover the situation. And usually it does, because usually what is involved is murder, thievery, some kind, assault, battery, and
You know, if I remember right, there are 5 transgressions in natural law, and those are all covered. You know, of everything you just mentioned, in one form or another. You know, they actually have it broken down that simply. You know, rape, trespass, murder. I can't. And honestly, I feel like I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. But yeah, it's just that simple.
Yeah. And everything else is just a complicating spin-off from it. Yeah. But, you know, we're, any idea, you know, about what these Earth satellites are about? They're apparently falling from the skies now. They're not what they were cracked up to be, and I don't know what purpose did they serve exactly. To
Are you talking about I'm sorry, you're talking about like telecommunications satellite? I'm just trying to.
yeah, telecommunications satellites, and there are other ones too. And
I wasn't aware they were falling out of orbit.
some
That's
have
something
been. Yeah.
I don't know. You know, I'm going to just in general. I see things falling apart right now. You know, if we, you know, the media tries to present everything as, hey, everything's going along fine. I don't think it is. I think that would be just icing on the cake if that were happening. I actually read something. I was going to bring this up. I read something this week where someone had estimated that 15% of the population of the United States is on board where we are right now. And I got to tell you, if there's any truth to that, I'd say the powers that be would be in serious, serious trouble if that were the case.
I think the powers that be are in serious.
Oh, I think they are too. I think they are anyway. I don't think it would have to be anywhere near 15%. I think if it's 5% or 10, that should be cause for concern. That's a significant group of people. When you think of it, there's 300 million people in the United States. That's a pretty 5% of that now is a pretty big group. I mean, if it were 10%, that's 30 million. That's bigger than the military, you know.
And some of them may be lukewarm, but if you consider the other 90%, the normies, they're worse than lukewarm. Maybe, you know, those of us in the 15% or whatever wouldn't die for our principles, or you know, to continue to worship God as we wish, as He wants us to. But there's others that I mean, if you look at the early Christians, there were many that were willing to die for the love of Almighty God and His Son. And how many would die for what they know is a lie? I don't think there'd be as many. They wouldn't be as enthusiastic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. I the thing is, once you get to that point, I don't think it's a very big step. Sometimes I think it's just maybe a realization of what needs to be done for what you're going to have to do to make things happen. You know, And I don't know. I think we're close to that. A lot of what I see. Okay, here's an interesting analogy. Here's something I realized lately. My sister and my brother-in-law are what I would call them, not as an insult, but I'd call them normies.
Uh-huh.
And they, you remember Donald Trump's assassination attempt?
Oh,
That
yeah.
that obviously staged nonsense that they did. Well,
Right.
they know that. Here
Okay.
they are. They're in the normal set. They're in the normie crowd, and geez, what a bunch of obviously staged nonsense that is. And I thought, well, isn't that something? If
Well, do they know the same thing about Charlie Kirk?
right, then it's not very hard to imagine that Charlie Kirk's assassination was staged. The actor portraying Charlie Kirk has moved on to another role somewhere else.
Yeah.
If we can embrace that, maybe we can embrace that John F. Kennedy's assassination. Maybe that wasn't even an assassination.
No, it
Maybe he
wasn't.
just no. Maybe he's just moved on. So I think what's happening, that was the catalyst. That was their wake up call. That was a transitional event. Hey, if gosh, does government stage other things? Do they stage things like, I don't know, pandemics? It's not
Like
it's
what?
not a big pandemics.
Oh, okay,
Would they
okay, yeah.
would they stage something like that? Would they make us believe things that aren't necessarily true? Here's the
Ron,
thing.
stop it.
I
They
guess
wouldn't. They would never do
no, they wouldn't
that.
do that. No, they wouldn't do that.
I know it was. It was a
Isn't
joke.
that crazy? Yeah, I'll tell you what, that whole thing, looking back on that, was so crazy. We're being
Yeah.
told, hey, the hospitals are overrun, and there's guys running around hospitals with cameras showing that the hospitals are empty, and
Right.
things like that were going on every day. But I guess the point I was making, I think the point I was trying to make here was there's that something that happened where the normies transition into our mindset. Hey, hey, this is staged. There are other things that are staged. Yeah, I think you're going to see that. That's a part of it. That's a part of the transition.
That too, yeah. In other contexts, people that are, and I think as more people turn to Lord Jesus, even the Muslims in the Muslim world are turning to Lord Jesus. It's going to be easier to see. So I don't know. We're going to have a Bible study in 2 days, so I don't want to repeat too much of what we're going to get into there. But I think I'm going to still stick with this broadcast just being only every 2 months, because people still are too frightened to give out their names, their phone numbers, their email addresses.
I'd say whoever that is, they don't realize how strong the surveillance state is right now. The reason I'm not worried about putting my name, because they already know.
Oh yeah, of course they do.
Already know, yeah. So what is there to hide from? They already know what your opinion is. There is no hiding now. Everything's out there. I mean, someone told me 20 years ago that if you have two wires running parallel on a wall in your home, that's a microphone. And I'm going to be willing to bet if some electrical engineer or somebody knows that, someone at the National Security Administration knows that, we're being surveilled 10 ways from Sunday. And I'm not hiding from anyone. I'll wave my arms. Hey, here I am. I don't care. What happens, happens. But it's amazing. Yeah, there are still people afraid to put their name out. You don't already know.
Yeah, I think the ones that have reason to be, and we see evidence, plenty of evidence that they are in fact terrified, are the gangsters. You know, we see that even gangsters in supposedly public life, which we know isn't. It's just their private little scam. They're afraid to put their email addresses out, even their official, email address in their official public office. So we have trouble, finding them to serve them with notices of their liability. But it's not a problem because we can always serve their secretary, their receptionist, whoever. As long as they're still putting on a show, there's somebody manning the building that we can serve a notice on, and then that's service on them. So, we can put them in the hot seat. Not really the hot seat. I mean, it's really, we just established what we think, we have reason to believe. I know that this is what I wanted to establish for people. When we do our notices, we don't prove everything. We just set out what we think the facts are and what we believe that the facts are. And hey, if we're wrong, you have X number of days to tell us how we're wrong.
Right, exactly. They were given an opportunity, and I've always liked that about the 3 notice process. Yeah, well, there is no, hey, I'm not saying I'm right. If I'm wrong, tell me.
Well, I think there has to be a good faith belief that what you're saying is correct. Yeah. Plenty of that, but we don't have to discount every possible counter theory, or we don't have to do in our 3 notices like what they would do in their fake corporate tribunals at all. It's not that way. We just establish what we have reason to believe it exists, and I'm willing to, to swear to it that I have a reasonable belief in that. And if I'm wrong, tell me, and I'll give you 3 chances. And after 3 chances, you don't take it, then our 3 people assembled in the name of Lord Jesus will make a decision based on the available information, which is going to be our information. So there may come a day that they will dispute what we say, but I kind of doubt it. I think we would have seen it by now. So they come up with other things, little threats that don't apply to us. And then, then they sort of go away. So, but I just, wanted to have people thinking about what these mass poisonings are really just attempted murders or actual murders, I guess, in some cases. But, I think the Lord expects us to do what we can to administer justice. It's been made very clear. And so I don't think we're ever going to get his help if we don't show that we have some initiative. He told us to be fruitful and multiply. And I don't think that the fruitful part just meant we have a bunch of kids who are going to be a drain on society. I don't think that's what he meant by that. And that's sort of what I want to address next time. And that ties into a lot of the stuff you were saying tonight, Ron, about being fruitful and using the brains God gave us, not just to make life easier for ourselves, but to fulfill, his purposes for us as best we can discern them. So, well, I think, an hour and a half in, we're probably getting, everybody's getting tired. I know I am. Are there any closing comments anybody wants to make before we do we're going to do a broadcast, I guess, in December, our 52nd one.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Catherine. This is something I've been thinking about today. I thought this would be, if you don't mind my asking this now. Do you remember we had a conversation at one point about someone who moved where you are, who had cancer, and their cancer just seemed to go away once they got to where you were? Where were they from?
Were
they from Ohio?
New Hampshire, I think it is.
New Hampshire. Okay.
New Hampshire, one of those two.
Because honestly, I think there's something kind of. I wouldn't have been surprised if you told me it was Ohio, because there's something seemingly particularly toxic about this state. There are
others that are bad too, though.
Yeah. It's crazy. I remember this. This was many, many, many years ago. I brought my first wife here to Ohio, and she was here 2 days and got dog sick.
Wow.
We literally had to go to the emergency room.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't know if it was from like the air here or what, was something environmental, but she got. I remember her getting really, really sick. Yeah, I brought her here to meet my parents, and she was fine when we were in Oklahoma, but boy, she came here and got sick within a couple days. Reminds me of.
There's different toxins in Ohio than in Oklahoma, and different, microorganisms and parasites associated with those that she needed some time to get used to. When I moved to Uruguay from the States, I was sick for a couple of days. And I think that's probably what it was. I haven't really been since, other than I think since the towers, since the 5G has come in, and I think they're putting more poison in the food.
Oh, hey, well, one more thing I wanted to cover with both of you. I don't know if both of you have tinnitus. We know tinnitus is just a generic term for something else.
Yeah, I have a friend who has it. I don't have it, but I know a friend who does.
I'll tell you what I'd like. If you want to look this up, get on YouTube, look up tinnitus shimmer.
We said
but it's literally 10 hours of high frequency sound that attenuates the tinnitus. I've used it; it works really well. It's provided me for some relief from that. I mean, regardless of the cause, I mean, I think we've discussed this before. You can attenuate one form of energy with another. In other words, if you're being energetically attacked, you can attenuate that with sound. Just like you can attenuate something sound-based with light.
Yeah, there's some stuff going on with that to supposedly bring people back from dementia, even with sound frequencies that they listen to.
Well, I mean, there's chromotherapy. Chromotherapy is the same thing. I mean, if you have problems with your vision, you can use light therapy to correct it. And I know YouTube took this down. There were several chromotherapy videos at one time that seemed to correct my blurred vision. In other words, I didn't need these reading glasses anymore. Yeah, and YouTube.
What? Oh wow! Do you remember what it was called?
Just read chromotherapy. But I'd be willing to bet YouTube yanked them. YouTube
balance out the blue that we get from the computer screens. Yeah.
It's CHROMA therapy, chromotherapy.
Yeah.
It's just basically color therapy for the eyes. Yeah, there used to be all manner of chromotherapy videos on YouTube, and YouTube yanked all of it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, they say in the evening you want to have more red light, coming.
And
Ideally,
that's what a lot of it was.
you can get full spectrum bulbs, folks. Apparently, from these big houses like even Walmart, and Best Buy, and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, there's infrared. There's all kinds of infrared therapies, and I mean, my chiropractor offered that one many years back. She had some kind of light therapy for people. It seemed to have a lot of positive effects. But
yeah,
I wanted to pass that on to the two of you, that tinnitus shimmer, because I was actually surprised by how well it worked. Yeah, but how long it's on YouTube remains to be seen, I guess.
right.
Yeah,
I think if you were doing both, because so many people think I got to save money, have LED lights, and my smartphone and all this, and if they had full spectrum lights, they would be doing much better.
I want to throw this in too. Here in the last month, I had a Substack interview with someone, Dr. Megan Rokel, and she was telling me about her 2019 Ford truck. And I was like, well, the show's over, but I was like, just to make a long story short, I think we need to start parting company with a lot of these things. I was saying, you need to get rid of your truck and get something with a diesel engine with no electronics, because of that model of truck that she owns is going to be, it's one of those trucks that the tail light goes out and it costs $6,000 because of the cascading electronics failures. I think I followed up with her on that. You need to. There's a lot of things that we're incurring. We need to just head in the opposite direction. Everyone else going this way. We need to go this way, and maybe try to carry along as many people as we can. Run from this. It's bad. Oh, okay. There. See that Luciana posted the link to that.
All right, I'll put that in a comment.
Is that what you're talking about? Can you see that?
Let me click on it and see what we get.
If it's the same one.
It's probably stuff. One of the, because there were a lot of those videos. There were a lot of them at one time. But there's fewer now.
Yeah.
And most of what I was looking at was for correcting vision. But it's taking a minute to come up here. I'll take a look at it here at some point. But yeah, it's funny. It seems like anything that works on YouTube, it has a limited shelf life.
Oh, wow.
Of course.
YouTube isn't really hip to that.
We have to put some of this stuff into practice.
But at any rate, like I said,
all right.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a lot of it.
If anybody wants to contact me, I think the phone number is on the screen, 614-633-0215.
Yeah.
Or by email, wljaradio@aol.com. So we'll see again. It'll be the third Thursday of in December. We'll do this again. We'll address how we can be fruitful and partner with the Almighty on a solution here. Okay, we'll take care. God bless.
Okay. I'm gonna go. Stay on, you guys. Okay. All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Luciana. Thanks, Ron.